Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to basically get into a new story time. It's Sunday story time. But before I do, I wanted to let you know that apparently my other two uploads, for some weird reason, YouTube only let 23 minutes and 43 seconds upload. So, sorry about that. I am trying to work through that and see if I can fix it. So this one, it may be short and sweet. Today, I decided to do this one, Warrior Rising by P.C Cast. Now, I actually have done a book recommendation and a short synopsis of this on my Instagram and my Facebook, but I figured I should go into more detail on it for you guys here. So I loved P.C Cast Goddess series. That's one of these books, or that's the series this book is included in, but it also can be a standalone. And I have read this book multiple times. I've actually read that series multiple times, but this book is so funny. I mean, all of her books are humorous in this series, but this one made me laugh the most. And it has to do with, you know how we had to read Iliad and Homer and all those in high school? Well, this book is about the Trojan War and Achilles. And so, of course, to start it off, I guess I'll go back to Achilles making his bargain with Zeus that he would become the berserker. So that way, his name would live on to through infamy, and everybody would always remember him, but he'd have a very short life. Of course, he made this decision when he was very, very young, which of course, totally upset his mother. She's a water deity, and she was always hoping for a long life, for him. But, when you're young and naive, you make stupid decisions. And so he did. And of course, it's decades past, and he really wishes he would have never made that deal, that he would have the opportunity or thought more of it as he is now older. So, of course, and a lot of them, they all believe that Venus and Hera and Athena, especially Venus, was the reason for the Trojan War to start. And she was so aggravated with this, that she had no part in it, and how they wanted the war to end, this Trojan War to end. So she decided, hey, I have mortal friends that are in the modern time, which is our time. And she goes, what if we bring one back that will help stop this war? Well, of course, Hera and Athena thinks this is crazy, but Venus says sure, because she has friends, in the series that she had gotten to know. So she decides that she's going to find one. So she goes to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and is viewing through her portal for the best option of a person that would work to help stop this war and hopefully even save, Achilles in the end. So as she's looking through her portal, she finds a group of younger women that, younger women is like mid-30s to early 40s, and they're all, laughing and having a good time. And the funniest part of it that Venus found interesting is that one of her friends was actually writing her final paper, and it had to do with the Trojan War. And how, a lot of the storyline had just, been beyond thinking of the crap that they put into it. And they're like, what? I mean, it was crazy. So Venus, is watching her, and she ends up being a psychologist, and she helps with people that have anger issues and, marriage counseling to basically everything. And she's like, oh my God, this person would be perfect. So this group of girls are all best friends. And so at the end of the night, her and her best friend Jackie leave, and they're in a cab to go home. And the whole time, Venus is like, she's perfect. I need to bring her back. She can help this. She can help Achilles. We can end this war. So, of course, as they're in this cab, and because they've been drinking, a Suburban runs a red light and smashes into the cab. And of course, Venus is like freaking out. She's like, no! And the cab burst into flames. And so she plucks both those souls and brings them to her through the portal. And so it's the soul of Jackie, her best friend, and Kat, which is a psychologist or, therapist. And she's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? She's too perfect. I can't let her go. Well, of course, Athena and Hera show up, and they're like, what is this? Why is there two mortal souls sitting here floating? And she's like, this is the one I was telling you about. She's like, well, their soul ain't going to do us no good. And so they're having this argument, and all of a sudden, during this argument of what to do with, Jackie and with Kat, Hera's temple is getting destroyed at the Trojan War. And so, of course, goddesses are just riled, and she's hearing, her worshipers calling out to her. So they hurry up and leave, and they get to Hera's temple, and it is a disaster. It's a bloodbath. And Hera is so mad when someone would desecrate, her temple like this, and that, all of her worshipers are females, and, they gave up their life as in worship to her. And so as they're walking around seeing this destruction, they see two women or young girls tucked into the corner. One of them happens to be Polyxena. And now she is the Greeks' princess. And so somehow she had got out and she'd went to pray at Hera's temple. And her maid or her servant was next to her. And they were both slaughtered in this. So they decided, hey, here's two perfectly good bodies. We can heal them because, they have like slashes on their chest and stuff from swords. We can heal these bodies and put the two souls I have into these bodies, and they will work. And of course, Hera's like, can we even do that? She's like, well, we're three goddesses. Of course we can. Put our powers together. We can make that happen. So they do. And so when Kat and Jackie wake up, they're like startled because the last thing they remember, they were in a cab, and they remember seeing the headlights of a Suburban coming at them. And the next thing they know, they're in this weird temple, and there's these three beautiful women in front of them that happen to be the goddesses. And so the funniest part of this is Jackie, her friend, is an ER nurse and trauma. And she's also was black. So can you imagine? I couldn't. The idea that this, independent, strong ER nurse from modern day world that was black gets woken up in a white girl's body. And of course the white girl's like 18 years old, and so she's freaking out. She's like, why in the world do I have blonde locks? I mean, Jackie really makes this whole entire book. She really does. She's funny throughout the whole thing. So they basically, Hera, Venus, and Athena tell them what they need them to do. That they need them to stop the Trojan War, and that they need their help. And of course, Kat, you're the one that really has to do this because you're the therapist, the psychologist or whatever. And she's like, what? And she's like, you need to help with Achilles, his berserker, and helping him, just in this war. If you can save his life, great, but we just want this war to end. And so, of course, they're remembering just that evening that they were talking about this and everything that had happened. And so, Jackie's like, well, who am I then? And she's like, well, technically you're her servant. She's like, what the hell I am? So they decided to make them both, like one of them be their, what do they call those? Like, I can't even think of the name of it now. Anyway, she'd be like their prophetess and whatever, and for the goddesses. And so they already knew that Achilles had a war prize bride, but he never had anything to do with them. And that's because when he first got inflicted with the berserker power from Zeus, when he made that deal, he was engaged to someone. And, he didn't realize that the berserker would come out when he was, in that point of sex, where his emotions got high and the berserker took over and he didn't realize it. And when he came to, his fiance was dead and he had raped her to death, basically. So ever since then, he's never lain with another woman because he doesn't want that ever to happen again. So, of course, having a war prize bride, they're basically just, fetching them food and giving them what they need, or basically, cleaning their clothes or whatever, cooking for them. That's what they did. Well, Kat, modern day women, we're like, hell no, we're not going to do that. So she decides that, she needs to find a way for him to control his berserker. So Athena goes and basically is going to be the one that says they're under my protection, to Achilles' camp. While Hera goes to Agamemnon, which I think that's how you pronounce his name. Don't take that exactly because, some of the names are really weird. But he basically says that he should take Achilles' bride, war prize bride. Because, she wanted to get her out of the way so that Kat can go into that place. And, of course, he thought it was a great idea because he hated that, Achilles wouldn't bow to him, that he didn't see him as his king, which he wasn't. And so, of course, he takes his war prize bride, which pisses off Achilles just because, he just thinks he has the right to. It's not like he really cared about this girl. So they bring in Kat and said, this is who, will be your war prize bride. She she was trying to find a way of, just talking to him to find out what the issue was. And that evening, as they're laying there, and before that evening even happened, his cousin, Achilles' cousin, gets hurt and is bleeding out. And there's this really disgusting, guy that thought he was going to be a healer. And Jackie, being the ER trauma nurse, freaks out and says, "Get away from him." And, goes into battle mode of fixing him and taking care of him. And this creepy guy works for Armageddon. And he goes, "How dare you?" And she's like, "Hey, she is actually protected by Athena, so you step back." And so he leaves in a huff and starts, hearing these rumors that she must be a witch and all this other stuff. So she, being the ER nurse, took care of him. He goes, "I'm your protector." And she goes, yeah, whatever. And come to find out, that means that she now belongs to him, which, they didn't realize that. So, Jackie has to go off with Achilles' cousin and take care of him, make sure he doesn't hurt himself. And Achilles takes Kat. So he's laying there, and it's evening, and she's trying to figure out how, they can even start a conversation. And she just, finds out that he can't sleep. He doesn't sleep. And she goes, "Well, I can fix this." And so she tells him that she's going to put him underneath hypnosis. And he goes, "Is that a magic spell?" And she goes, "No, it's not a magic spell. Just trust me." So she finally gets him to relax enough where he goes underneath hypnosis. And so she wants him to, get used to her and her tone. And of course, even though Achilles is battle scarred, a lot of people were scared of him because of all his scars, which she's more mortal, and she don't care. She thinks he's still beautiful. And so her watching him, and he's totally relaxed, and he doesn't have the stern look on his face. His face is relaxed. That, she starts touching him, and of course, she wants to make sure that the berserker doesn't come out. And so she does. And she's talking to him, and he's enjoying her touch, and the berserker doesn't show, and things get really, really intimate. And they don't have sex, but they get really intimate, let me tell you. And so she ends up basically getting them both off without having sex. And she was a little shocked that she even did that. But she let him sleep. Of course, she let him remember anything he wanted to remember, which he remembered everything. Of course, he still thought it was a dream, and he couldn't believe it. And he was in the best mood ever. Well, the king's realizing that he's pulling out of the war, that he doesn't want to battle right now, and he's really pissed about this. So, she tells Jackie what she did that night while she was sleeping. She's like, "What? You raped Achilles?" She goes, "I didn't rape Achilles." And so she's like, "Girl, you dirty." It was so funny. I mean, I love how PC Cast made Jackie into this hilarious person. But anyway, the king wants to get rid of this war prize bride because she's holding him back from going into war. And she was basically telling Achilles that she was trying to help him so that way he wouldn't have to, die at the war, Trojan, and that, he could live a long life. And so he was willing to do anything, this is it. This is his last chance. And so, of course, this king was really mad and decides to, basically give a sacrifice to Poseidon so that way Poseidon would kill this girl, which he didn't know that, she was protected by Athena or Venus or Hera, and so she's walking the beach. This horrible sea monster comes up and wraps his leg or his tentacle around her leg and starts to drag her into the water, and it's shocking and paralyzing her limb by limb. And so she had a locket that Venus had gave her, so that way if Berserker showed up or she got in danger in any way, she could open it up and call to her. So, she calls out to Venus, "He's killing me." And so Venus goes straight to Achilles, which was just training with his people. And, she goes, "You have to come with me right away." And she goes, "Yeah, I've never worshipped the goddess of love before." And she goes, "No, it's Kat. She's in danger. She's being killed." And so he goes with her, and they disappear in a poof of sparkles, and he shows up right there, and he sees what's happening. He gets enraged, and the berserker comes out. He's hacking and killing this sea monster. And so, she, of course, gets put back up into the beach, and she's like, to the point where she's almost unconscious, and the berserker's coming at her. He goes, "You will be mine, female." And because he has no control over it, Achilles doesn't know who he is when he's in that state of mind. And so, of course, his mother comes out of the water and says, "Begone, berserker," and water just rushes over him. And that's when, Achilles is back to his normal self, and he sees her. He runs to her and runs her back to his camp, trying to save her. So Athena and Venus and Hera and even his mother, that's the water deity, all come trying to help everything they can to save her, which Jackie, being the ER trauma nurse, is trying to help her as well. Well, Jackie had to spill the beans to Achilles' cousin that they weren't actual who they were. They were from modern mortal world, and she was an ER nurse, and that's why she was giving out all these orders, and people had to listen. Well, Achilles still didn't know at this point, and he was really falling for this girl. And so he's basically he's pacing, he's just freaking out. She's been unconscious for days. When she wakes, she basically says to Jackie, I need to tell him. He goes, go ahead. I already told, his cousin. He already knows. And of course, Jackie was falling for her cousin too. And so when Achilles came in, and she knew she probably looked like horrible because she'd been in bed for 3 days, and he just said, you're beautiful. And she was just so surprised and how different he was. And so she basically told him everything. She goes, it's not magic. I was brought here to try and help you, and I will do everything in my power to make sure you survive. And so they end up falling for each other, and she's keeping him out of the war. Well, of course, his cousin, still young, and arrogant, he keeps being pissed because he's not joining the war, and he really wants to go to battle. And so Venus thinks, oh, this is another way to end the battle. So she goes and talks to his cousin and says, hey, little, goddess, Mirage, I can make you look like Achilles. Because granted, he already kind of looked like him, but he just wasn't as big. So she stole Achilles' armor that was distinct for him because it was gold, brought it to his cousin, and said, I will make sure that you look like him when you go into battle. So, of course, his cousin was all for this. So his cousin goes to battle, and he's actually, brought down by actually Polyxena's brother, which is the one that was supposed to go to battle with the Berserker anyway. That was in, mythology and all that. So he doesn't realize that the person he's battling isn't Achilles, that it was his cousin. And whenever he's laying there almost dying, and they rush him back to camp, and Achilles realizes what's going on and what had happened, he was upset. So Jackie goes into her ER, nurse node, and she gets him into the tent and gets everybody else out, and they call for Venus, and Venus is like, no, this wasn't supposed to happen. And she goes, I cannot save him. You have to send me back to the mortal world with him. It's the only way. ER, he needs it. So Venus does. The whole time that king hears about this, and he goes to the tent, and he overhears Venus and her talking, and that they're from the modern world, and that they were having to disappear, and they'll have to seal the tent so nobody can go in. And so he goes out and tells Achilles, he says, your cousin is no longer on this world, which he technically wasn't lying, but he did it intentionally to make it seem like his cousin was dead, to enrage Achilles so he'd go to war. And it does. And he tells his buddy Odysseus to tell Cat that he's sorry, that the dream is over, and he lets go. And usually when he turned into the Berserker, he always kept a hold of his humanity a little bit so he could turn back. Well, this time when he thinks he lost his cousin, that there's nothing else, worth living for, and he lets go completely. And the Berserker becomes more grotesque when he shifts into shape, and even bigger, and goes off to war. Well, she wasn't going to have it. She found out what that king did. And so she goes into the war, basically telling Odysseus, you have to take me to him. So she's trying to get to Achilles to try and get him back and get rid of the Berserker before he gets killed. Her brother comes out of nowhere and sees her, as Achilles does, or the Berserker does at the same time, and steals her away. And of course, this enrages the Berserker. That's my woman! And goes charging after him. And so he gets, Polyxena, Cat, on the other side of the wall, and closes the wall and thinks he rescued her. And then he ends up fighting Berserker and dies. Her brother does. So, of course, the Berserker, instead of just destroying him and moving on, he desecrates the body of him because he stole his woman. The Berserker's not in his right mind. He doesn't realize what he's doing. So he's desecrating this body, and she just knows that she has to end this. And so she calls into Venus when she's in the palace and says, we have to end this. Give me your strongest sleeping potion. So she does. And so she goes down to the guards that guard the gate, thanking them for saving her life, for opening up that door, and gives them this drink that actually has a sleeping potion in it. she realizes that she's the Trojan horse, that she was the one that was supposed to end this. So when they fall dead asleep and unconscious, she makes sure that Venus tells, Achilles' troops to be there, and she opens the door to the gates of this wall that's been keeping them out. And they all come running in as she runs out to try and stop the berserker, and she realizes that love's the only way. So she runs out, and of course the berserker's used to everybody running from him, so when she ran towards him, it kind of, stalled the berserker because he wasn't used to that. And he goes, "Female, you're now mine." And he grabs her up and hugs her real close to him, and she kept talking into his ear. She's like, "Achilles, come back to me, come back to me." And of course, Paris and Helena, one of the two people that reasoned for this war. Paris was mad because his brother was killed. His sister's with the berserker. So he throws that spear and it lands right into his ankle. And right before then, when she was calling out to Achilles, he heard it. Deep down in his subconscious, he heard it. And he was coming to it. He was shrinking down. And so when that happened, he turns into flames as she falls back from that spear lodging into Achilles' ankle. And she calls out to Venus in her charm. She goes, "I want my boon. I want it now." So all three goddesses show up. And as Achilles is burning there alive, basically from that spear, which she doesn't even understand that, she says, "Reach in and grab him. You will not be burned." So she reaches in through the husk of the berserker and grabs Achilles' hand and brings him out. And when she does, he is like he's like perfect complexion. He no longer has scars all over his body. That he is, who he is supposed to be. And at this point, Poseidon has came in with his water raging through, because that water could never get through the barriers of those walls before, and now it does. So he thought that he owed this girl a boon for what she did. Of course, Jackie and his cousin come back into it and realizes that, he's well, he's in a hospital gown, which, the guys are ribboning on him because they don't understand why he's wearing this. And so Poseidon says, "What boon would you like?" And she said, "Someplace where we can start fresh." And he decides that of an island of Avalon. And so she asks Achilles, "Do you go with me?" And he goes, "Yes, but Achilles died here. Achilles no longer exists." He goes, "We will change my name and we will turn it into something else." He goes, "But this day forward, I am a new man." So Poseidon's boon, for one, accidentally almost killing her, and two, for her opening of the gate to get his waters through those gates that has held him back along with the Trojan War, are finished. And so they ride off. I mean, it is amazing. I absolutely love this book. I highly suggest you pick it up. If anything, if you don't, pick up another book. Let me know what it is. Let me know what you think of it. And again, always love what you read. And I hope you guys all have a fabulous day. Until next time.